Well, so today we are talking about breaking free or learning to overcome from learned helplessness. So, thank you everyone for being here. I'm so excited that you are taking part in this webinar, and I hope especially that it is very helpful to you as you consider um, some of the suggestions and the practices that we will be talking about to implement in your community work, because I believe this is a very, very important topic for us to be talking about. As you might have seen in our past webinars, we talk about things like fundraising or communications, but this is a topic that I think has extreme value that all of us, I hope, will start a conversation today, but we will not be ending it because there's so much more to be talking about as we do this work. But really, the reason we are talking about this today, that all of us know this, that people in communities need healing. We all face our personal healing and brokenness, needs for healing and brokenness, but we also see so many people that we are serving through our NGOs, our CBOs, our organizations to see that there is just a need for us to address that healing. And often we come in with very wonderful interventions. We're feeding people, we're helping them get access to healthcare, education. These are all really needed things. But today we're going to be peeling back the layers and thinking about something a little bit deeper than that. So, why do people and communities suffer? I will give credit to actually a participant in our webinar this morning. Mr. Ray Menard is the one who introduced me to this beautiful summary of why do people and communities suffer. So, I really want to thank Ray for that. Ray was with the Spades Foundation. But we looked at, if you think of all the different ways that people and communities suffer, you can categorize them into these categories. First of all, injustices. We see this often, right? That people suffer because of injustices, and those injustices are caused by others. We also see that people and communities suffer because of circumstance, things that happen that are unpreventable events outside of their control, illnesses, natural disasters. Now I know we can connect natural disasters to the injustice of climate change as well. But ultimately, there's a lot of things that happen that are outside of our circumstances. And then finally, we have suffering that comes from our own mindset. And a mindset is a person's established pattern of thinking. It's their beliefs, their attitudes, the perspective that shapes how they perceive and respond to situations in their life. So a mindset is this mental framework that influences a person, and that can be a source of their suffering as well. And that's really what we're going to be focusing primarily on today. So we see also too that how do we work towards ending the suffering? So in injustices, we fight for justice. We speak up. We use the power that we have to change people, groups, and systems. We correct the wrongdoings that are taking place. We protect people's rights and freedoms. And as Raymond said, this is ultimately about standing alongside them rather than doing this work separate from them or ahead of them, because that space of being along with people, I think, goes much further than doing justice work alone. And in circumstances, our answer to that is we offer assistance, we offer comfort, support, companionship. We try to alleviate the effects of that suffering, and ultimately we offer them love. But what do we do when it is the mindsets? The most common approach is capacity building, right? We believe that giving people the knowledge, the skills necessary to change their circumstances is going to be the way that we change their mindsets. But truly, that rarely changes it. Knowledge and skills can help people overcome the injustices and the circumstances, but it does not change the deeply ingrained, the beliefs, values, attitudes, and perspectives. We're going to see that when we help people learn to see their world differently and change what is deeply ingrained, that creates hope in them. And that's where we see a mindset shift. Learned helplessness then is a mindset. That's the thing that we are talking about today. Learned helplessness is likely one of the most foundational challenges of any kind of community work. And I'm sure it's something that all of you have seen in your communities. So no matter the external problems that someone faces, such as hunger or unemployment, if they feel helpless to change their lives, they'll be the kind of clients that are going to be coming back to you over and over again, right? They're going to be dependent. They're going to believe that very little can change in their lives. And then this helplessness can also spread throughout their family, throughout the community, and it can even spread to generations. So it reinforces everyone's belief that their collective helplessness, and it becomes a cycle that we see over and over in our communities. It happens because of people outside of their circumstances. We don't want to blame the community members or people to say, you are the cause of the learned helplessness, but it is something that we want to walk alongside them and help them overcome. So, learned helplessness also perpetuates injustices because it keeps people and communities from changing oppressive systems that are creating their context of their suffering. It also allows the oppressors to better use their powers. So, this is a tool of the oppressors to keep people in a mindset that they have no value, no dignity, and that allows them to maintain their power over others. So learned helplessness, it must be overcome communally. You can't do something and just say to the person, hey, you got to be recognized this and now you're done with it, or process this on your own, do the work on your own. It is something that cannot be wished away. We have to walk alongside members as we help them recognize and work through the process that we'll be looking at of how they can overcome that. So our role as NGO leaders is to guide, to encourage, to demonstrate, to speak the truth about who they truly are. The person is the one who leads the change in themselves, but we walk alongside them. And it's important to remember that we do not blame them for having this mindset of learned helplessness, but when they overcome it, when they take steps to overcome it, we give them the credit. We recognize that they are the ones doing the work, and we celebrate that work with them. So this chart is what we're going to be looking at a little bit today. So we see so many effects of learned helplessness. And this is, I'm sure, what you all see in your communities. We see that people have low self-esteem. They believe they have no voice, no power. But since this is a small chart, I'm going to show you screen by screen some of the effects of learned helplessness. So first, we see that people have low self-esteem. They believe they're not valuable. They do not regard themselves highly. They also believe they have no voice, so that what they say does not matter. They prevent themselves from speaking up for themselves. They also believe they have no power. They believe they do not have the power to change their circumstances. They also believe they have no agency. They feel that they have no independence, and they believe that their life, their context, their circumstances are at the mercy of others, that others have power over them, but they do not have agency to do anything for themselves. That also leads to for them to not have any confidence. They do not believe in themselves because so often they have been told that they should not believe in themselves because they have no value, because they have no worth. This creates then a context of dependency. The person believes then that they are dependent on others to provide for their needs and wants. As I've worked with so many people through Cultivate, I see this over and over where communities are stuck in this place of dependency. And dependency is not just because they do not have the financial resources to change their context. It starts with this mindset that keeps them believing that they cannot do things for themselves. Often we see people are unwilling to change. They might wish for change, but sometimes they feel they are unwilling to start by taking the necessary steps towards that change. It might be because of fear, it might be because of shame, but that unwillingness to change, it takes a lot of energy and effort for them to be able to find that desire to change, and it is a difficult process. Ultimately, then people believe that they are stuck, that they cannot change their current context, and that also they believe that they have no dignity. They carry a lot of shame because of all the things that people have told the systems and history have told them about themselves. And ultimately, this means that the person or the community feels hopelessness, that there is not the possibility for a different future. We must remember that learned helplessness can be overcome and through a series of purposeful growth that people and communities can experience. This is possible, and I know that in working with others that many people and communities have gone through this process. And this is the road that we are suggesting to you is the process of overcoming learned helplessness. Again, we're going to look at each of these specifically, and you will have access to this design after the presentation as well. But this road to overcoming learned helplessness, we draw it here as a road. You can also think of it as a cycle, as a process of moving back and forth, often through the same steps over and over again. This is not linear. We're going to look at some of these different steps, but they sometimes do not happen in the order that they are listed here. Learned helplessness often starts with inspiration. Overcoming learned helplessness often starts with inspiration. So here in the slides and in this presentation, I'm going to talk about specifically with people, but just so you know, this is also a process that collective communities go through as well. So to overcome learned helplessness, a person sees empowerment in someone else and they're inspired. You know, we don't want to create a situation of jealousy, but at the same time, seeing someone who is very similar to them, but that is in a different context, a different circumstance, can be a source of inspiration for them to be able to say, maybe it is possible for me to do something different as well. So it often starts with inspiration that they see in someone else or in a different community. But that person or that community has to be as similar to them as possible. It's very difficult to take a community that has faced extensive amount of oppression, injustices, hardships, natural disasters, and those things. You're not going to create inspiration by comparing them to a community that's on the other part of the world that has a completely different context and a completely different set of circumstances and resources available to them. So you want to find something that is someone that is as similar as possible. You're also going to then see that people then, because of that inspiration, they start growing in their desires and dreams. So they identify their goals, their dreams, they develop that desire for change. Again, sometimes that developing of that desire can be very difficult, but nonetheless, a little seed has been planted and that desire for change can start to grow. They start to have a more active mindset towards the future. So often what we see is that poverty and oppression keep people stuck in a mentality of looking at today only because today's needs are so great that it is difficult to plan and think about the future. But when when those desires and those dreams start to take root, people start thinking more with a future mindset, which often can be very helpful for them. They sometimes often do not know how to change, but that desire is in them nonetheless. And often that's where the NGO can come in, right? They may not know what the change is, but together we can identify how that person can change. The person also goes through a process of reevaluation. So they learn to reevaluate their life circumstances. They learn to find the good in the hardships. Now, this section here, this part might seem like, hopeful thinking that we're going to look at all the hardships in our lives and say, wow, I'm really glad those happened. That's not realistic. Obviously, hardships are hardships and they will always be seen as difficult things. But we have to learn how to reevaluate those hardships. Otherwise, our perspective will keep us stuck in that space where we feel powerless, where we feel like we are victims of everything that happens in our lives. So this is not believing that they have earned the hardships. We're not helping people to say those things happen in your life because you deserved them. That is not the case. So in the reevaluation process, we're not we're not telling people that they have earned the hardship or deserve the hardships that are happening in their lives. That is not the case. However, we're helping them recognize that there is still some good that come from the hardships in them. They can start practicing gratitude for the small things in their life. So they're learning to reframe their mindset around the hardship. So they're seeing that they can grow, they become stronger, more capable, and wiser because of their struggles. And the process of reevaluation then leads to this next step, where we see a growth in their self-esteem. So because they start to believe in their own value and dignity, because of the reevaluation, they see that they have much more than they thought they did. And that grows their self-esteem. They see the good in their life. They see maybe some of the assets that they have and the personal capacity that has been established because of the hardships in their life. So they also start to then to see the potential that they can become someone. They see the potential of who they truly are and then what can change in their life. So we often talk about empowerment, that we want to empower communities. Well, empowerment is fundamentally believing that you have infinite value, you have innate value just being a human being, no matter your race, your ethnicity, your social economic status, your gender. That is not what matters. That they have innate humanity and dignity, innate dignity just because of their humanity. And that can build their self-esteem. And as people grow in their self esteem, then they're going to see that they have awareness of choice. So they start to have confidence in their own ability to choose. They see that they have agency in their own life. So even though many of their choices are limited, they see that at a minimum, they have the choice to determine their beliefs, their attitudes, and their emotions, their mindset towards those hardships in life. So the more choice someone has, the more freedom they have in their life. And I've often heard this, and it's such a wise saying. You know, often in the West, we think that poverty is a lack of resources. But poverty, as many of you agree, poverty is not a lack of resources. Giving people money does not eradicate poverty. Poverty is a lack of choice. And when people recognize that they have choice, they have agency, even if it is starting small and increasing, that is a process of overcoming their poverty. And as they become aware of their choices, then they start to identify ways that they can use the power that they have. They start to see that no one can take away their inner freedom, that everybody, their body might be enslaved on the outside, but what is inside, no one can take that away. They have the determination, they have the power to determine their response to the hardships. And that's one of the most empowering things that a person can have. They see that they have agency to do that. Years ago, I read a book by a person that survived the Holocaust, who has become now a father of psychology and someone who has influenced many people to recognize the psychological power of our will. And what this person really emphasized is he saw that the Holocaust survivors, the ones that really survived in the camps and made it to the end of the war, were not the ones that had the strongest bodies. Were not the ones that somehow, collected most food. It was often the people that had the power to choose their response to that hardship. They saw purpose in their life, and that gave them then that power to continue to survive. It's a beautiful, beautiful way of looking at life, to see that ultimately we all need purpose. We need to have something that we work towards, and that gives us then the fuel to keep pressing on and to survive. And through all of this process, then that is where hope is sown. So as people recognize these stages of their overcoming helplessness, they grow in hope for something new and better. It creates, like I said, a sense of purpose and focus in their lives. It gives them a new determination and passion. So the despair that they once felt is replaced with something better that they can believe can truly become a reality. So maybe their outside circumstances have not changed at all, but having hope can give them that purpose and focus in their lives, which then leads to a place where empowerment can really take place. And that's why we believe that empowerment is the opposite of learned helplessness. And we're going to look quickly here. This is going to be a future webinar for Cultivate as well, but we will look more closely at this. But then how is empowerment manifested? So once someone overcomes learned helplessness and they really start growing in their empowerment, what do we see in their lives? We see things like greater agency, freedom, potential. They take greater responsibility. Their voice is stronger. They have more independence, confidence. They have access to the resources that they need. This is how empowerment is manifested. And here at Cultivate, one of the things that we teach in our community development course is how do we get people to become empowered? Overcoming learned helplessness is not the only step. Overcoming learned helplessness kind of gets them to from below ground to a zero state. And then empowerment is growing above ground, right? Like if you imagine a tree, its trunks and its leaves. Overcoming empowerment is just getting from the roots to the trunk. And now empowerment is where we go from the trunk to the leaves. And personal empowerment really is a formula that looks at people's building people's strong identity, helping them know their purpose, helping them build compassion for others, strengthening their connections and relationships, strengthening their hope, and building their resilience. And that's where empowerment really comes in. And once we have empowered people and we add in practices and programs that are focused on asset based, community driven development, that's where we start to build strong communities. If you don't know what asset-based community-driven development is, our course does offer that. But we're not looking at empowerment today. We're really building the base for how to do empowerment and really looking at how do we do this work of overcoming learned helplessness. So next, I have invited someone who's going to be sharing some stories and situations with us. Her name is Matimba Muya. She's a nutritionist for the Hunger Project in Zambia. And in my conversations with Matimba, I've been able to see that she has experienced this process of overcoming learned helplessness in many of the communities that she has worked in. So I am going to now ask for Matimba to unmute herself and introduce herself here to us.
Hi everyone. Like I've been introduced, I'm Matimba Mwakamoya, the nutritionist or nutrition specialist for the Hunger Project Zambia. I'm currently based in Chipata, where we are running about 4 projects as the Hunger Project in 4 different districts of Eastern Province. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matimba. This is great. So, Matimba, how have you seen people and communities who have experienced a lot of poverty, oppression, marginalization? How do they get stuck in this mindset of learned helplessness? And then, how does this mindset affect their personal and communal challenges? In other words, like, what are the consequences that you have seen in people and communities because of the mindset of learned helplessness?
All right, thank you so much, Elaine. So sorry I had turned off my video. My internet is very bad, so
No
I
problem.
didn't want any interruptions here. So in my work with the communities, the major consequence that I've come across because of this learned helplessness is that communities are not able to recognize their potential. They're not able to recognize how they can actually achieve a lot without help from outside. They feel they cannot um, achieve anything without an external factor helping them out. So most of these communities that we have been to, you would find, for example, they'll tell you, no, we can't take our children to school because we don't have the money. But then they do not realize that actually the help lies within them, the solution lies within them. So when you start talking to them and help them understand to say, look, even if you do not have money for school, you still have some capital that you can use, sell, and take your child to school. So they're not able to recognize that the solutions to their problems are lying within them. So they are so used to, we can't do this, we can manage, so we need help. That is the consequence that I've been able to note during my work here.
And how has that created hardships for the entire community? I mean, have you seen then generations being stuck in this mindset?
Yes, actually, I've seen a lot of generations stuck in this mindset because in their minds, their forefathers went through it, their mothers went through it, so they're going through. For them, it becomes normal. So it becomes normal, and it takes a lot for you to shift them to see that they can actually be part of the solution. So it becomes a norm, and this brings about a lot of problems because they do not think they can move from that problem. I mean, generations upon generations have been going through, so it becomes normal. It's something that now gets to their mind to say, this is normal. We are suffering. Our forefathers suffered. Our children will suffer, and it goes on and on.
Yeah. So, Matimba, as you have been doing this work, what are so the work that, for instance, like the Hunger Project is doing, how has your work been harmed, or what are the challenges that you experience then for you, for your organization, as you are working with people who are stuck in this mindset of helplessness?
Well, one of the major challenges that we have faced is that these people that we're working with do not recognize themselves as partners. They perceive themselves as beneficiaries. So now when they perceive themselves as beneficiaries, it results into them being dependent on external help, because a beneficiary receives only, and usually for a short period of time. Once is withdrawn, they go back to how you found them. So it has been very difficult for us because our strategy is we do not call the community, when we go into a community, the people that we are helping are not called beneficiaries. Because when you call them a beneficiary, their expectation is that you're going to offer all the help, address their problem, and that's it. But our approach is let them work as community partners. So we call the people we work with community partners. That way, when you call them a community partner, you are telling them we are bringing help, but you are also a partner in this. I'll bring part of the help. What can you also bring? So that way we are partnering in developing that particular community, because we've been to areas where we had, say, a project come through, build them infrastructure. At the end of the project, they hand it over and no one uses it because everything the project did for them, the community did not feel they partnered. The only partnership came in when they were told this is yours. So our approach is partner with the community. If we're going to build you a school, okay, so as a project, we're going to bring in roofing sheets. As a community, partner with us by bringing in bricks, by bringing in the wood. So you share responsibilities. That way we've been able to see a difference with how our communities are transforming, because we're working with them as partners. So as the Hunger Project, we do not address our partners as beneficiaries, so we do not have the term beneficiaries, and that has been very helpful, because when you it means they have something to offer as well. So that has been our approach.
Thank you so much for that, Matimba. So as you then have worked with communities, how have you seen people overcome learned helplessness? Like what things did the people have to learn or overcome to get to that point where they see themselves as partners?
So for us, the major thing that they had to learn was mindset change. We dwell a lot on mindset change as we mobilize our communities wherever we go. So we had to work on their mindsets. Remember, these are people that feel their forefathers, their fathers, themselves, generations to come are suffering. It's a norm. So now we had to teach them to shift their mind from we can't or we have been suffering to we can and we can change for the future generations. So the major thing that we've had to do as an organization in order to achieve and ensure that our communities are self-reliant is mindset change. So we invest a lot in mindset change as we mobilize our communities, and we have certain aspects of mindset change that we teach. It's not a once-off kind of thing, but it is something that we do repeatedly until the communities make it part of themselves. Yes, so the major thing that we've had to do has been mindset change.
So how have you then provided opportunities as you work with these communities to create that mindset change? Is this trainings that you've done, different activities? How has the Hunger Project purposefully focused on mindset change through their programming?
Okay, so yes, it has been through trainings. There are trainings that we call vision, change, and action workshops. So this is where we mobilize the communities at village level through an approach we call the epicenter strategy. So this strategy is where we mobilize communities between 5,000 and 15,000 people. So we mobilize these communities to build what we call an epicenter. So this epicenter is a center that has structures such as a school, a conference hall, a clinic, a village bank, a seed bank. So once we mobilize these communities, the first training we're doing on mindset change is what we call vision, commitment, and action workshops. So here there are 5 principles that we work with in these workshops. So the first principle that we are teaching the communities, you have to shift your mind, the mindset change principle. So we give examples like, okay, so we have come to give you help. How different are we from you? Is it not the same blood that is running in you? So that's an example I'm giving. So you try to help them understand that despite them being in that state for long, it does not make them any different from you. So they can still achieve what they want to achieve. So you work around that. The second principle that we work with them is they need good leadership. So good leadership here will refer to leadership within their households, leadership within their communities. So we teach them on good leadership. Then we ask them the vision they have for their communities. So you've worked on their mind, you've asked them to change, or you've convinced them to change. Then you've spoken about good leadership. Then you ask what their vision is. What do you want to achieve? So they'll tell you, okay, for example, I would like as a community, say, to have village banking services, or would like to keep animals, say goats, chickens. So we say, okay, that's your vision. So you've come up with a vision. So once you've come up with a vision, then we teach them this vision that you have come up with, you have to commit to it. So after they come up with a vision, we teach them on committing to that vision. So the next program is commitment. So we take them through how they commit to that vision. And then after committing, they need to act on that vision. So we work with the five principles of mindset change, good leadership, vision, commitment, and action. So all these that we teach, we make sure they are taught in a local language so that it's easy to cement. And whenever we have these meetings, we try to ensure that we talk about it over and over and over again until they are cemented into the minds. And I must make mention that we have seen this actually work. Those who have an opportunity can visit our project in a district called Bugwi. There is what we call the Malawi Epicenter. We would be very, very impressed with the work that is happening there, because we have seen mindset change. So usually this epicenter is run by the community, the organization, the government, other stakeholders. We just come through to help on a technical level. The leadership, the running of the epicenter, the running of the projects of the epicenter, the community is the one that has to run them, because at the end of the day, we want them to be self-reliant. So during this period, it's a whole path where we teach them, we empower them. At the end of 5 years, the community should be self-reliant. By self-reliant, we mean they should have a title deed for that epicenter. They should be able to be running income generating activities for that epicenter. When we leave and hand over to them, they should be self-reliant for generations to come.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. We are going to have an opportunity to ask Matimba a little bit more questions or ideas at the end of the presentation as well. But thank you for that. So as you can
You're
see,
welcome.
it is not an easy process. It is not a quick process, but I believe it is something that we as NGO and CBO leaders can focus on. So let me share a little bit here more of maybe some suggestions of things that we can focus on or implement in our work. So here are some suggestions. Again, these are suggestions. They're not what I believe is the only things that we can do, but looking at the steps of that road of overcoming learned helplessness, here are some things that I believe that we could do. So, first of all, you need to determine how much learned helplessness is affecting your community. We need to be able to have a true understanding of how deeply rooted this is and what its effects are in the community. So, in our program design course, we talk about doing a community assessment. And that's where we look often at the needs and assets in a community to help us have a greater understanding and picture of the context of that community. This is part of that process as well, is really learning to evaluate how much is learned helplessness affecting the community. This starts with people, but then grows to the entire community. Another thing is to identify ways that you can walk alongside your community members to help them overcome learned helplessness. So, again, this is not something you're going to force the community into, but does something that you can do alongside with them. Some people may choose not to participate. We all know that we can't force people to do things. And this is additional to the services that you're offering, right? So many of you are doing interventions like educating children, working with agricultural practices, working in healthcare, all these things. My belief is, and cultivates belief is, that these are things you can do alongside your interventions and your activities that will then increase the effectiveness, the impact ultimately of those interventions in the community, because it's going to end that cycle of helplessness, dependency, and really get the community to a place of empowerment. So first, you're going to then also help the community identify all the harms for themselves. So you want to help them identify that. You don't want to come with the list and be able to say, "Here's all the harms we're seeing." Help the community members identify themselves. Discuss how how they see themselves as helpless, and then help them discuss and see that these are lies that keep them helpless. So if the community members have been told generations over and over, because of who they are, because of their context, because of their identity, that they are of no value, they have no dignity, that they should be ashamed of their circumstances. All of these things are lies. So part of our work to walk alongside them is to help them see, first of all, the harms of helplessness, and for them to start to believe that these things are not true. A few other things that you can do is to help then identify people and other communities that can inspire your people. So look in the region, look for stories of people, other communities that have overcome learned helplessness, or at least are in a process further along of overcoming that helplessness. You want to share their stories often with your people. You want to see if you can even invite those people or communities to come to your programs, to your community, so that they can get to know one another, hear those stories, hear how it's helped them, hear the change that's taken place in the community and people's lives. That first step of inspiration is going to be very crucial for the next steps. So identify those people and communities that can inspire your people. And remember, the more similar they are, the better it is. Your people need to look at someone or a community and say, they are just like me, and look how much they've been able to overcome. You can also help people identify, to speak out, to voice, and to record their goals and dreams for themselves and others. So this could be something like creating a community list of what are people's dreams, goals. Once you have that list, or once you have something created, you want to review it, you want to update it. Get people together to say, okay, how are we doing towards these dreams and goals? What progress have we made? What are still the barriers to reaching those things? We often think that people just automatically understand their dreams and goals, but doing the process of helping them actually identify it, to voice it, to say it out loud, and have some way of recording it so that you can review what those are, is going to be incredibly helpful. You also want to help people identify, and this could be, at the same time in different sessions, however you choose, but you want them to identify their fears, their worries, their challenges, for why they believe creating change in their lives is going to be difficult or impossible. Help them voice out loud again and record that. What are the things that they believe that prevents them from creating change? And then for those, discuss how these can be false lies, the things that they believe, the mindset that they have, how those lies then again are something that they should not believe, and that others in power historically, currently, have been telling them, and telling them to keep them in a state of oppression and marginalization. You can also help people create their own life timelines. So, this is an activity that in our leadership development course, we have all of our trainees do this. So, it's an activity that you can do. And basically, people, we identify, we look at what has happened in my life or in the community's life from the beginning to where we are today. It's just a timeline where you list all the major and sometimes even minor events. You're going to identify the good and the bad ones. And what this activity does is it helps you look at different ways that your life has contributed to who you are today. We're going to give you a template for how to do this activity with people or your community as well. But in this process, then you have a discussion of how the good events and the bad events have positively contributed to who the person or the community is. So again, you want to review that, update the list or update the timeline as more things take place. This process of using the timeline is how people start to reframe their hardships, right? They're going to see that maybe there was a significant loss in their life, but what good came from that loss? How did it change their character? How did it build wisdom in them? How did it build resiliency and strength? So help people identify the positive things that came from the hardships. Help people practice gratitude for the good in their lives. So if you have maybe community meetings that take place often, can you start the meetings with gratitude where people share even the good, the small and the big things that are happening in their life? Discuss often where people in the community can see that voicing all the good is a good practice for them to take on. You can create opportunities for people to identify and discuss their value and dignity as people. So this might be difficult, especially for people who who feel like it's too proud or too prideful to talk about their good, their value, their dignity. Show them that it is not the opposite of value and dignity is not being, ashamed or unwilling to talk about it. Affirm their value. Remind us of this often. So maybe if people are unwilling to talk about their own value and dignity at first, you as staff members, volunteers, can start identifying that and affirming that in them as often as possible so that they start to believe their value and their dignity. You can then also create an organizational culture with your staff, with your volunteers that emphasizes positive affirmations. So, this means that you're going to be telling and celebrating people's strengths, accomplishments, dignity, capacities, and inherent worth. So, how often are you telling the community the things that you see in them that is positive, right? Create opportunities during your programs, during your trainings, during your meetings where you are affirming people, because the more we hear of others seeing something good in ourselves, we start to believe that. You also can help people identify who they want to become and what they want to change. Again, this can be done in several on a one-time activity or multiple activities, but get this into the practice of your programs where people are continually then identifying like this is who I am today, and here's where I wish to be in the future. And then help people identify all the choices that they currently have. So, again, this might be difficult for some people to recognize. They might say, I don't feel like I have any choices. So, maybe others, such as your staff and volunteers or other community members, can help each other identify the choices that they currently have, choices for their mindset, choices for their beliefs, their emotions, but also choices in their context and circumstances. And then help them see that they can use the power that they do have, because we all have power, to create that change in their mindsets and their circumstances. So once we see a choice, we feel emboldened to take the power to use our power to then make that choice. So help people recognize the probably likely the abundance of choices that they do have, even if it is difficult for them to first identify those choices. Then you can also identify ways that you as an organization can measure people's progress. um, in overcoming helplessness and mindset. So, this is going to be like data collection. This is program evaluation. This can get a little tricky, but if there are ways that you can identify how they are progressing in this, then you want to share that data with the community often. You can also share this with your donors and supporters because it's also going to help your donors and supporters see the how holistic and deep your work is. It's not just the external interventions, but the internal work, the mindset shift that you are walking the community alongside with. So it's difficult because hope can't be measured, right? How do we measure hope? I don't think anyone has ever figured out how to do that. But you can identify the outcomes or the evidence of that increasing hope. So, is there increasing client satisfaction in your programs, client participation, and ultimately, they're increasing ownership of the program. As Matimba said, it's not, that they become clients, but participants, that they're co-owners of what's happening. And that is a process of a mindset shift in itself. So how can you collect data or measure that progress in the community? How can you measure clients' ideas and their own initiation of new endeavors as they grow in their own belief in their own capacity, in their own abilities, their own power? You're going to see that they're going to initiate new endeavors. How often are they sharing ideas with your staff and your volunteers? And how often are they saying, let's do this and I'll take it on? And then you can also measure clients' diminishing dependency on your programs. So look through your programs. How often are things given to people that they could get for themselves, or then as increasing ability to provide those things for themselves? So you want to find a way to measure or track their diminishing dependency. But as you gather all this data, it's really key to make sure to always share it with the community first. Part of program evaluation is that we often take information and we just hold it to ourselves and we don't give it to anyone else. But there's so much value for you to be able to share with the community because they need to see their progress. Your donors need to see your progress. Yes, that's important. But first and utmost, your community needs to see the progress because sometimes, we're like fish swimming in water. We don't know that we're in the water, right? Someone else needs to tell us that we're in the water. So when you can show to the community, here's the progress that has happened from, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 months ago, then they can start to see, oh yeah, I didn't really think anything was shifting, but actually look how much has actually improved. So make sure to always share that information. But ultimately, there are some things you want to remember. This entire process is an ongoing cycle. It is not linear. You're not going to go from step 1 to 5 and be done. It's going to happen over and over again. And different people will have different experiences and outcomes. Don't expect everyone to benefit from this in the same way. People and communities will also regress. They might have some steps forward, some steps back. That's okay. True change takes time, so we have to be patient. This is really difficult work, but it is really worth it. If we incorporate a mindset shift in our external interventions, such as feeding people or educating kids, we're going to see a much better impact in our work because this is what truly we wish to do, is for communities to take ownership and grow in what they are doing and have less and less dependency on our programs. And for us, all of us as NGO and CBO leaders, we have to learn together and we have to share our learnings. There's so much more to be done. This webinar might be the first time that you're thinking through these processes and these steps. It doesn't stop here. For those of you that are in Cultivate's programs, I would love to hear what you're doing. For those of you who are not in Cultivate's programs, share with us, join our program. You don't have to be a part of our program. Communicate with us, email me. Let's share these stories. We can even start to find ways. I was thinking about this before the webinar, is there a Facebook group that we can start, a WhatsApp group? Because I think sharing our experiences and the things that we learned is going to be beneficial for everyone. For those of you who are unsure what Cultivate's program is all about, it is something that you can join at any time. We work with people, with leaders of any status, any programs worldwide. We help you learn things like community development, best practices, fundraising, program management, communications, financial management, all different aspects. And part of, this webinar today is part of our course in our community development course. If you participate in our program, you get a certificate in social impact leadership and organizational management. You can join the program anytime, and we do offer scholarships. Scholarship applications unfortunately just closed in the month of August. So our next cycle is going to open up in January, and applications will be due by January 15th of next year. So please visit our website to learn more about what we are doing and if this could be of benefit to you. But now I want to stop the presentation and make sure that we have time for questions, and maybe not even questions, but actually also sharing of our experiences and learnings through this process as well. So I'm going to open up for you to be able to ask myself any questions, to be able to ask Matimba any questions, or each other. I'm also going to take a quick look here through the chat. If you want to say something, feel free to unmute yourself. If multiple people start talking at once, please let's just take it one person at a time. But feel free now to speak up if there's something you'd like to ask or share.
Elaine, I think there were 2 questions in the chat that I picked up. Not sure if I can answer them now.
Do you want to? Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so Edward was asking how easy it is to convince the donors as well as the participants to engage in such a project, considering that the results are not sort of. So for us, what has been helpful is for the donors, it hasn't been very difficult because they understand the whole process. It was a bit difficult with the community because we're coming from a background where they are used to seeing change quickly. That is why we worked on the mindset change and them understanding that this is a community-led development project. So by them to lead, it meant that they determine when they get to see the results. And also some aspects of the program indicated they would see certain, for example, construction of a clinic. So they would see a clinic starting to operate already. They would see a conference hall already built. So some results might not be instant, but others would be seen instant. For example, they would start their village banks right there. So already that's an instant result, but it's something that it's not something that we achieve overnight. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of talking to the community every now and then to ensure that we're still on track. Remind them this is about them also as partners. So that is what has helped us with the Mlawa Epicenter project here in Vobwe. Then also the fact that you let them decide on what they want to see is helpful because they know that we decided on a school. The school will not be tomorrow. It might be after a few months. So that has also been very helpful. Then there was another question on how many years it takes to self-reliance. Our epicenter strategy, self-reliance takes up to 5 years. So after 5 years, self-reliant, and as an organization, we should be able to move to another area and have another epicenter.
Yeah, and Matimba, I'll add to this. Edward, we often in our program we talk about that donors. We sometimes assume that people who are not in economic poverty don't need anything from us as an NGO. Like, we just get their money, we implement programs, we give them receipts, we give them reports, and that's it. But that's not true. Part of our work as organizations is to educate our donors. Often our donors don't understand the context of our communities, the root causes of what is happening in the communities. So part of your role is to educate them through this. For them to see, for them to understand, what are the mindsets that are harming our communities. And that can help your donors recognize that they can be stuck in learned helplessness as well. Maybe the effects of their mindset are different in their lives, but nonetheless, I think this is something that all of us experience. But for a lot of the donors, especially if if you're working with donors in different countries and who have never come to your community, they might not understand what you're talking about. So part of your role is to educate them, to say, this is why we do these seminars, these trainings. This is why before, every session where we are, offering food to the community, we talk about these things, or why we've created village banks, or why we've created self-help groups. Educate your donors in that process, because I truly believe that if the donors see what you're doing, hopefully it's going to build much deeper connection, which does help you then financially to be able to raise more funds to keep such valuable programs running. So I think it's really important to be able to show that. And for both the community and donors to keep emphasizing, this is a slow process. You're not going to see, turnaround right away. Let me look through the chat here. But again, if anybody wants to ask a question, you can unmute yourself as well if you want to ask it over video. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to pick up where you ended about the time dimension. I want just to stress that one, because this is important and depends on project, because we want to rush, we want to deliver, we want to do the operation which are visible, which are significant, and then we don't have time to analyze and understanding the concept of the participant. I want to avoid the word beneficiaries, and I like what Matimba said about participant and not beneficiary but partners. This is very important. They should be participant. They should be partner. They are not beneficiary. They are not recipients. So, in what you said is linked to something which is very important. It's about building relationship. It's about building trust, and that takes time. And most of the time, this is where we fail, because we want to deliver. We bring knowledge, we bring inputs, we bring to the community, and then we want the community to take. And then by taking, we are missing one of the most interesting part, which is the ownership. And this is what Matimba said. I think is important. As much as we understand that there are risks to be managed by the communities, but it's also our responsibility to be able to show that, it's not about the significant operation that we are delivering, but it's what is going to be sustainable. It's what is going to stay. And we want to have some lasting benefits, like we said. So I think I find myself in this kind of conversation very, very important aspects that we need really to keep. I want just also to stress the fact that when you are addressing some cultural barriers, it's not something that you can do in a year or so. Thank you for just saying that takes time. It's not going to be delivered in a couple of years. So you have got to be patient. We're dealing with the people that we respect, of course, but we need also to recognize the level of dedication, the level of exposure, if they have come across different experience and so and so. So it's just like coaching or mentoring. Have got to understand and take time to understand the situation and the environment when they are, and then be able also to try and then bring in some of the suggestions that you are putting on the table. So thank you very much. This is the beginning. It's not the end, and then I think we will benefit as we go. Thanks.
Thank you, Edward. Those are really great ideas and thoughts. I know you have a lot of experience that you have worked through this, but thank you for that.
Thank you very much for the sharing that you have had, and also the experience from Matiba. I've done a lot more of listening, because just the whole idea of learned helplessness came to me as a good eye opener. It has been I've been grappling with the whole idea, especially when it comes to the communities. I'd never got the most appropriate label for it, and until this point when you have shared all this, and also it also helped me to appreciate the fact that at times actual NGOs, even the public sector institutions, we actually perpetuate the land helplessness in terms of the way how we label things, how we give attach different things. So even how we design these interventions, they are well-meaning. We mean well, but at the end of the day, actually, in one way or another, they end up perpetuating this land helplessness. So it has been a very nice an eye opener for me, and also has got me thinking at different ways. So thank you very much for the presentation, and also for the experience that has been shared by Matiba and many other participants. I look forward to more of such interactions in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix. Those are some really good insights, right? I think often all of us have I think it's a part of being human where we want to have power over others. We want to be in control. And it is difficult to do that. And I see that in NGOs that I have been a part of, and even in my work with Cultivate, where it's looking at like, is this something that, have I created, like you said, labels? Am I perpetuating a dependency because I want them to be dependent? I've seen, been part of NGOs that are doing things that look and are truly well intended, but they're not taking the time to really inspect of, are they giving ownership and true participation to true collaboration with the community, rather than coming in and saying, well, we are the educated ones, we are the wealthy ones, we're the ones who have had all this experience, so we're going to tell you what needs to be done. So it's important that we come in with a mindset, or we come in recognizing that our mindsets need to be changed as well. And that for everyone, this is an ongoing process. We're not going to get to a point where we just say, okay, now I know everything that needs to be done, and I have overcome the mindsets that keep me trapped. Well, thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate your participation. I appreciate your ideas. And please, let's continue this conversation. I'll be looking for ways, and I'll be sharing ways with all of you that have been part of this webinar for how we can continue to share our knowledge, share our ideas with one another, because I think this is really important work for NGOs all over the world to be focusing on. So thank you for being here today, and I hope all of you have a great day.